So we're here. This is a program hosted by the New York State Bar Association's Attorney Wellbeing Program. We are excited to welcome Julie Shore, who has over a decade of experience working with small law firms and focused on burnout prevention. So she's here today to talk to us about how to avoid burnout. There's 7, maybe 8 steps on how to lighten your plate and reinvigorate your career. We're really excited to have Julie here, and we encourage you all as participants to utilize the chat and engage with the program. Julie is able to be kind of conversational, make this a casual presentation for all of you, really tailored to your needs. So with that, I will pass it over to you, Julie. Thank you so much for being here. Again, we're really excited to have you.
Well, I am very excited to be here with you all today. Good afternoon. I am Julie Shore. I'll give a little bit more of a formal introduction here in just a moment. But before we get started, I promise I won't put anybody on the spot. But if you don't mind just chatting in real quick, years you've been in practice and maybe area of the law. I just love to kind of see who's joining us today. And just go ahead and you can just type it in the chat. And then I know Jen is going to launch just a quick poll. It's also helpful to just get a pulse on, are you a solo currently working with a small law firm? I know everybody defines this differently, but I'll say less than 10 attorneys, mid-size 10 to 25, large 25 to 50, larger or really big law, right? 50 plus. Just curious who's watching and participating live today. So, and Jen's going to keep an eye on the chat too, because I tend to get rolling with the content. So, okay, we look like we have a variety of folks on with a variety of experience. Awesome. Paralegals too, family law. Wonderful. This is fantastic. Okay, I guess if we give another moment and then thank you for being brave enough there to chat in and share your experience. That's terrific. And then let's see, Jen, whenever you're ready, can you show the results so we can see who all we are in company with here? Okay, so it looks like I'm just going to call it sort of a third, and a third, right? Fuzzy math there. Solos, small, mid-sized to large. So wonderful. Thanks for pulling that together real quickly here. So make sure my slides are turning here one sec. Okay, wonderful. So at this moment in time, just chat in yes or no. How many of you feel like you are just thriving at work and outside of work? Yes or no? Simple answer, simple response. Yes or no? I'm just going to glance at the chat while you're doing that. And then I just need 2 things from you to get started. One, make sure you have pen and paper handy, or if you're a OneNote person, whatever, so you can take some notes. And the second thing I'd love for you to do is grab a piece of paper you don't care about and a pen. And as I'm about to review your chats, what I want you to do is write down on that piece of paper anything that is super heavy on your mind, in your heart, you're worried about. I promise you, I'm not going to ask you to share this, but I would love for you to just jot down what is really weighing you down at this moment in time. And then I'm going to glance at the chat here. Okay, awesome. And the next thing you're going to do is that piece of paper, I want you to shred it, crumble it up, toss it, get rid of it. It's gone. You are where your feet are for the next 45 minutes. Can we do that? Forget about what is on that piece of paper, and I'm giving you permission to just be where your feet are right now. Okay, wonderful. I had put in the chat, and I don't know, Jen, if you can kind of recopy it just because I don't know if it got way up in the feed, that I did put together a PDF. You're welcome to utilize it. It contains some of the core questions for you to kind of think about as we go forward. our time together. I'm going to cover a whole lot more than what's on there, but I just thought it would be a great springboard for some quiet contemplation after our time together today. And I really want this to be what you want to get out of this. So don't hesitate to raise your hand. Jen's going to keep an eye on it for me between the chat. And if you have a question, I'm happy to pause and address whatever your comment, question, what have you is. Okay. So I'm here to tell you, and hopefully no eye rolls just yet, that it is possible to learn how to thrive in our careers and at home or in our personal lives together. And at the end of our time together, I'm hoping you'll find at least one, if not two things that give you actual actions and steps you can take later today, tomorrow, this weekend, what have you. So, but first, what we need to do is sort of unravel. And sorry if you see me looking up, I have another screen here. The lies we tend to tell ourselves, being crystal clear on our strengths, how we're spending our time, what's just a drag on our energy, and how to make things better for you and your team. And this can happen at all stages of your career. So, whether it's you're new to the profession, you're kind of mid-range, or, you're deep in, you've got lots and lots of years of experience in a variety of perhaps different areas of the law. It doesn't really matter. It ebbs and flows, right, with our experience. And life is about choices, and we've got to focus on what we can control. And as a career development coach, and I'll share in just a moment, when I've worked with small law firms, I work with individual attorneys or work with professionals in other industries, I always tell people, I don't have a crystal ball, right? But it's about what do you want to do next? And so I have to challenge you. We're kind of in this like group coaching session today together. That's really kind of what we're doing to really think about what is the next, right move for you. Whatever it is, maybe that was on that paper you crumpled up or what brought you to this training today, figuring out what is one to two things you can walk away with and do differently. So again, my name is Julie Shore. It's nice to meet you all virtually here. And my background is in human resources. So I have more than, I'm going to start mumbling, 20 plus years experience in HR, and then morphed into HR consulting and now all things career development. I started my career in medical malpractice insurance as a compensation analyst, hated my job, then moved on to a little place that is now called PricewaterhouseCoopers, and basically left corporate America when this happened. And my husband and I started a family. And like, if any of you are familiar with public accounting, it's not at all unlike, especially big law, where you have billable hours requirements. And I had a flexible work arrangement 23 years ago, but basically that protected me for working 40 hours a week. And so my values, work and professionally, had shifted and I was in conflict. And so I was in this big hamster wheel. To make a very long story short, my husband was a teacher in a non-union state, told him I was quitting. I was the primary wage earner. He threw up on the side of Interstate 64 in Richmond, Virginia. And he's like, what are we going to do? I'm like, I don't know. We'll figure it out. And again, long story short, figured out what the needs were in the marketplace, figured out what my core values were, and have made every decision since that time and gotten to meet some really great people. And the last 10 years really niched in the law firm space. So often when I hear people say, and I'm coaching people, whether it's in their firms, making them stronger, better, hiring the right people, or just individual attorneys who are burnt out, it's like, what do you want to do next? And I get all the time, I want to help people. Okay, well, that's great. How do you want to help people? And, what's your why? Simon Sinek has that, and you can look at YouTube. He's a great personal development coach as well. But what powers me personally, and oftentimes you hear this from people, is your family, right? And so getting crystal clear on what your core work values and personal values are, I do a whole other workshop on that. I'm not going to spend a ton on that today, really should drive whatever sort of conflict, conundrum, challenge that you're facing. And when I coach people, we actually dissect what are your work values, what are your personal values, and that is fundamental to understanding what is causing you so much grief or stress or burnout. That's one way to look at it. But that baby I showed you a few slides ago is the bride. Our oldest daughter Elise just got married about a month and a half ago. And then our daughter to the left of her is Isabel. She is going to be a senior in college. And then our youngest daughter, the redhead, is about to be a freshman in college. And that's my son-in-law, Kyle, myself, and my husband, Matt, who's an educator. So I have done all things career development in more than 20 industries, but a ton in the legal industry. The thing that's probably obvious right now, and you're all scratching your heads, is no, I am not attorney. So what's the next best thing you do when you're not an attorney? You hang out with a bunch of attorneys, right? And so I've had the pleasure of really traveling around the country for the last 10 years and getting to know attorneys in a variety of settings. And, everything from estate planning, elder law, civil litigation, business litigation, district attorneys, I've worked with. And I've worked with attorneys and firms across more than 18 states in the most remote locations. I've helped hire attorneys in Hayes, Kansas, if anybody wants to look up where that is. I worked with a firm in Wyoming where she was like, gosh, Julie, she kind of did a little bit of everything, was burnt out, and we were looking to hire an attorney. And like 3 weeks into our coaching, she's like, time out. I want to shut down my firm. I'm done. I want to go be a district attorney. And so I helped her figure out really what was her next, gave herself permission to kind of downgrade financially with what she wanted for what was at that point in her life. And off we went and built a plan to do that. So I've had the pleasure of getting to know a lot of super smart attorneys, and I'm really grateful for that experience. I've also had the opportunity to do a variety of speaking and workshops around the country. And again, can't thank you enough for your service you provide. But one thing I'm going to hit home today is just because you've been there and done that doesn't mean that's what's right for you to do next, or maybe just to do it in the same way. And really want to end this tug of war feeling that I often hear from, it's like this vicious cycle, especially if you have your own firm or you're responsible for hiring, whether it's a legal assistant, a paralegal, a client intake, whatever it is, and all while keeping, the billable hours up in some instances, developing new business, engaging your teams, coaching them, making sure people are happy. It's a lot, and yourself, right? It's just a lot. And so we want to really get you thinking about what can you control, like what's within your control and what's not. And so often we spend time worrying about what just is not within our control. And so I want to kind of shift that. And the one thing that is not within our control and is a constant is change, right? And I'm here to tell you, we all have different appetites for change. Some of us thrive on it. Some of us, it freaks us out, right? Like we are here to steady the boat. And the issue is if you're trying to find a position, a firm, what have you, where change is, the dust sort of settles, outside of transactional areas of the law. Look, I have coached people. I mentioned that law firm in Hayes, Kansas. He was a litigator, I believe. And he was like, I'm so burnt out, I'm walking away. He shifted. I think he was probably in his late 40s, maybe early 50s, and learned estate planning and elder law all over again. And he has built quite a successful firm, and he's looking to retire and transition to other partners now. And so, it's getting clear on the fact of what is your appetite for change, right? Obviously, as a litigator, change is constant, right? There's little you can control. And so if you know that about yourself, and I'm going to talk to you about a tool that helps people understand that, you just might be in, maybe it's not only what you do, but where you do it, right? And so again, focusing on what you can control, because it's really not about, change is going to be here. It's here to stay. And it's not about perfection, it's about progress. So just yesterday, personal story, and then we're going to dig in here. My middle daughter, you saw, she's about to be a senior in college. She plays soccer. Long story short, on the left, about 10 days ago, she fell on her wrist and injured what's called the scaphoid bone or scaphoid, which apparently is like one of the most dangerous spots to potentially have a fracture in your wrist because it's your thumb leading down to your wrist. And so they treat it with extreme caution. And so yesterday they x-rayed it again, and she at least got out of the bulky, uncomfortable cast. And now she's in one she can at least take off and on and exercise with, and can take a shower with or swim or whatever. So she's not done. We still don't have resolution, but it's a step in the right direction. So many things are not about perfection, but about progress and perception, right? Perception is reality. So much of what we see, do, and experience in our own careers is about our own perception. We may interpret a particular encounter with a client, a coworker, whatever, one way, and somebody else another way. So I want you to chat in right now. What do you see in this picture? There's no right or wrong. What do you see in this picture? This is a very famous sort of optical illusion. And Jen, I don't know if you can sort of unmute and just read to me a couple of them as they come in. That'd be great.
So far, we have three people that see a woman, a young woman faced away. Um, One person sees both a young woman facing away and an older woman's face. Someone says a woman wearing a hat with her head turned away.
So this is, thank you. So, and feel free to keep going. This is a famous optical illusion from the late 1800s that was on a postcard and published in 1915. And this is just an example I don't know if anybody, feel free to raise your hand if you've seen this before. Usually those of us that are more experienced have, right, in various trainings. And people, even just, thanks, Suzanne, even people, the studies have shown that younger people tend to see the young woman, older people tend to see the older woman with the chin down. So again, we're staring at the same black and white drawing, but we're seeing two different things. And that's just a quick example of we can all easily perceive situations at work, at home, whatever, in different ways, even though we've been told the same thing, or maybe we're staring at the same thing, or maybe we see a, similar set of facts. So as we get started here, I want to dispel fact from fiction, excuse me, as it relates to all things career and burnout and stress. And the first one is, and feel free to just plug in, chat in, true or false. You can have it all. What do you think? Yes, no, true, false? I see a lot of smiles. You can have it all. Jen, what are people saying?
Feel like we've got some skepticism. So we have a few falses, but also some or maybe.
Right.
Feel
And
like
go ahead.
it's nuance. That's a nuance answer. People wanna elaborate more, I believe.
Yeah, more details, Julie. What the heck are you doing to me? So, all I'm here to say is you can have it all, but not all at the same time, right? Like if you have, everybody has bucket lists or whatever, and we could certainly talk a whole lot more about this. But for people who my experience has taught me, and feel free to dispute, but you can't have everything equally all at the same time. It's just like this whole notion of work-life balance, right? It people talk about it as if it's like two equal buckets weighing the exact same thing, and that's just not life. That's not, there's no such thing, right? How about this one? We all have the same 24 hours in a day. Yes or no?
Have got some pretty strong no's here.
And so there could be people interpreting it that as like, what do you mean? Well, here's the thing, the clock will tick, right? Time marches on, whether we look at it, ignore it, whatever. We are all have our feet on the ground. We're here at this moment, right? For 24 hours, but we don't make the same choices in using our time. And here's an exercise to try by yourself, with your team, whatever. How did you spend the last 24 hours? Most people, and I want you to write it down hour for hour. Most people really struggle with that, or they find what they wanted to do and intended to do and what they actually did were two different things. And the easiest place to start is how much sleep did you get last night, for instance, right? Maybe look at your calendar. A third myth is no one can do what you do. So thinking no one will do things as well as you can, or you're irreplaceable, may or may not be true. I will tell you, I've been in enough trainings and enough small business discussions that, in fact, if you're a solo or you have a small law firm where you play a pretty significant role, it could take 2.5 people to replace what you do. But the question is, why are you letting that stop you? Which is, again, a much bigger discussion, right? So when I get involved in firm succession planning or have over the years, that's a big, big debate. Another myth is, my team, my clients need me. If I'm not here, what are they going to do? How can they do this without me? Well, it's the same thing. I will tell you, years and years and years ago, I listened to an attorney speak who was pretty successful. And she said, I tell my staff, unless they have an appointment with me, they cannot interrupt me. There's no like knock on the door, like, hey, do you have a quick second? Hey, do you have a minute? Hey, do you have a question? I remember when I heard that, I thought it was like the most rude thing I ever heard. I was like, what? Like, what are you talking about? Well, and I'm going to address this too. You know, every time you allow interruptions into your day, we all know, I've seen the studies, it takes like what, 15, 20 minutes to get back on track. You are diverting your attention to someone else. And here's a negative byproduct of that. We are not teaching, whether it's our staff, our clients, our coworkers, whatever, to problem solve. We're actually aiding and abetting their lack of problem solving skills in some cases. Now, please know, I know there could be people stewing as I'm, sharing some of this, and feel free, we can chat further. But just in terms of best practices and just sharing some general observations, that could be a natural byproduct where we think we're helping someone, but in fact, we've now caused ourselves to stay another 30 minutes late tonight. We have, lost our focus on whatever contract we were reviewing or drafting, all to answer a simple question when somebody could have done their homework, dug a little deeper to find a file, or we're going to talk further, be keeping their own list of questions and not constantly interrupting. No one else feels overwhelmed or stuck, so it must be me. How many of us have ever felt like it's just got to be me? Like, I don't know what I'm doing wrong. I just can't get this thing right. I've heard so many times in the last 10 years, like when you go to law school, Julie, they don't teach you how to run a business. They don't teach you how to deal with people. They just teach you how to do lawyering, sort of, right? Um, Not true. Not all attorney roles are equal. Not all firms are equal. And just regardless of profession, it's not only what you do, but where you do it, who you're serving, who your boss is, who the culture is. And trust me, I have worked with some law firms over the years that I've sort of gently walked away from in terms of hiring when I did a lot of hiring because their culture, I could find somebody the best person in the entire world, but the minute they walk into that culture, it's toxic. And so I can't, going back to the things, focus on what you can control. So myself as a service provider, I can't control what happens day one once somebody goes into some law firm. So some of us, as you grow in your career, you get a little more brave to be confident in who you are and what you stand for, in addition to your technical skills. So it's almost like, and any of the recruiting I've done with law firms in the last 2 years, honestly, it's almost like we assume the technical's there. We're looking for the most suitable fit. And the other thing is sometimes a firm or wherever you are can be a great fit initially, and sometimes you just grow out of that, good, bad, or indifferent. You don't have to beat yourself up for it, but maybe it's time to make a pivot or a shift in some way, shape, or form. Because someone asked me to do something, I should always say yes. So this is one of the hardest sort of pills to swallow when, especially we're early in our careers, regardless of profession. This mug, one of my admins gave to me probably about 7 years ago as I was complaining about all the volunteering I was doing. And she's like, Julie, this is your Christmas mug. Nope. Anyone asked you to volunteer? Nope. you know, when we're early in our careers, we tend to just take on, take on, take on, take on, or maybe some of us listening are just super nice and we just do. Going back to the statement I made a few minutes ago, is it the highest and best use of your time and talents? Yes, early in our careers, we should be hungry, we should raise our hand, we should volunteer, but at some point, we have to kind of put limits around the highest and best use, of our time and talents for our clients and for ourselves. Because someone texts or calls or slacks, instant message, whatever, I should respond right away. You've got to decide for you and or your firm and or your team, because I know we have a variety of situations here listening. So my kids grew up with me working from home, and I've built a pretty successful practice over the years, that I basically said to them, and I've used this in a ton of trainings with law firms over the last 10 years. Decide what is for you what I call your bleedings or on fires, right? If, like I used to tell my kids, if you're not bleeding or on fire, don't interrupt me, right? I know that sounds terrible. I promise I was not cruel, but So anytime I do a time management sort of training with attorneys, like literally they go back and think about those interruptions. Like, are they really interruption worthy? Right. And it's a huge culture shift, right? Like even just one-on-one with you and a legal assistant, or you and a paralegal, or you and a, the front desk, whatever. But just think about that, right? Is that always necessary? And I would also argue if you are giving clients access to you, especially in smaller firms, I hear this all the time, to text you or, whatever, because my paralegal can't give legal advice. I get that. But we teach people how to treat us. Write that down. We teach people how to treat us. If you happen to be somebody listening and feeling stuck and not sure if you want to lawyer anymore, I've worked with a variety of those in the past year too. Like I've actually approached them to hire them away from their firm for another firm that I was retained to work with. And they call me back. They're like, Julie, I don't want to be an attorney anymore. And they became my career client. But the number one answer or, pause I hear a lot of people make is I'll never make the same amount of money, right? Yes, money, finances matter, but what do they matter for you next? Right. And so I'll give you a few examples. If you're somebody listening to this that's like, gosh, I don't know if this is right for me. Maybe it's just not the right environment. Maybe it's not the right type of law. I've worked with three people recently, a workers' comp attorney, litigator, partner in a smaller firm, just worn out from staying up to prep for trials till 3 a.m. on the road constantly. He pivoted, it's probably about 3 years ago. Actually, I'm sorry. Yeah, John was about 3 years ago, into major gifts roles at universities. So where he basically learned estate planning and from a different perspective. I have another estate planning attorney who has just recently pivoted to be a consultant for a wealth management firm working with higher net worth clients. And she's making more than she made at her firm. And she was part of big law, but a smaller office. I have another one who was a general attorney owner. Actually, I think I mentioned her in the beginning in the Midwest, who shifted over to be a DA. So people are shifting all the time, even in the legal field. So really want to talk about in this next, 20 minutes or so, really digging into tools, handling burnout, what's on your plate. I know that was communicated before, and that one's really fun when we're in person, but you can try it with your team. So anything I share with you, take home to your families, friends, kids, whatever, your teams, and let's see if it's helpful to anyone. So today is all about you. Everyone fly at one point in time? Yes, no, right? So what do they teach you when we all go numb to the instructions, pre-flight instructions, la 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 la, la la la, put on the air mask, right? This is what this is about. Think about the oxygen mask for you today. That's what this is about, to help you get some clarity. And I did, again, if you didn't see it, I know Jen was putting the handout there for you as well. So anytime you're looking to gain clarity from, I'll say, a career development standpoint, or just even like, what should I do next with my firm if you happen to lead a small firm or lead a team, right? Starts with data, building a plan, and executing a plan. The only way you'll fail is if you don't execute. That's it. So let's look at some recent stats on burnout. And this is not legal industry specific, I'll just give that disclaimer, but 3 out of 4 people sometimes feel burnt out. 1 in 4, very often or always. And the Gallup organization, I don't know how many of you are familiar with them. I think they're based outside of DC, does a ton of research in terms of employee engagement and workplace satisfaction and all that good stuff. And historically, for as long as I've been doing presentations, I don't know, 15 years or so, probably about 1 in 3 of us on this Zoom love our jobs, are fully engaged. 60%, 2 out of 3 are not. And that could be varying levels, but statistically, that's what it is. And they actually did some research on this detachment theory. Whereas since 2015, and that top line, sorry, I gotta look at my bigger screen as I'm explaining this to you. The top line is representative of people, like since COVID, about 50% are looking for new jobs. Meanwhile, in terms of extreme satisfaction, it's down around 18%. That's the green line below. So you can see this inverse relationship. So even if you're trying to be the best you can be at work, people you're working with could have like one eye open over here looking for a new job. And that, the unemployment rate has been between 4 and 4.2% for the last what are we at? 14 months, I think, since May of 2024. And attorneys, I mean, anytime I do retained recruiting for attorneys, it's hard because I'm mostly cherry picking them out of wherever they are. I mean, the unemployment rate for attorneys is like 0.9%. It's really low, right? So it's tough. 88,000. Chat in if you have any guesses why this number is important. Uh-oh, Joel's smiling at me. I feel like he's been in one of my presentations before, or he's heard this number. I can't see very many of you. I only can see like five, so sorry to pick on you. 88,000. Any guesses? I'm going to switch over here. No clue. People switching jobs in the year. Wow, that would be a lot for sure. Okay, any others? But that was a good one. No clue. Okay. 88,000 in the interest of time is the number of hours we will spend at work over a lifetime. How do I get that number for anyone who's detailed and a mathematician? Well, again, we could argue. We're going to just use rough math. Let's say age 22 to 62, right? That's 40 years. And you multiply that times 50 weeks because we're going to assume 2 weeks of vacation a year. Now, I all know, I'm going to guess, don't beat me up. Some of you listening are like, oh my gosh, I would love a 40-hour work week, right? But we all know we work more. So the point of that is, and you can do the math based on where you are in your career. Like, let's say you're half at that midpoint. Do you want to spend another 44,000 hours like miserable? No, right? So today I'm going to give you tools again as we keep moving forward here to empower yourself to begin to think about what is your next right step. If it's make it better in what you need in your current situation, or how do you determine your value proposition to move forward? So here is my exercise that is way more fun in person. But my plate exercise, I know you can't see it because my thing is fuzzy, but I love to do this exercise. I've done it with a variety of occupations. And this is where get your pen and paper out. Like, one, we gotta be real and honest, right? Like, the reason I love career coaching and left core HR is because people can tell me all kinds of real stuff so I can really help them, right? When I have my hiring hat on, of course, I can't ask them about health issues or, what's annoying you or certain job related things. And any employment attorneys, I know what I'm allowed to ask and not ask on a pre-hire basis. But let's be real. What's on your plate? And I'd like you to make a list. We'll pause for a minute here. And I know we'll have to keep chugging along, but what are like the top 5 things that are on your to-do list or what's on your plate for work, and then flip it for home? Like, what are all the things? Pick the top 5. I know you all have way more than 5. I mean, I didn't even try, and I have 7 listed. I did this in about a quick minute, but right. So, what's on your plate for work, and what's on your plate for home? And then go ahead and chat in just one thing that comes to mind, whether it's work or home or one work and home. Go ahead and just chat in. Like, what is something that's really pressing on your plate for work and or home? I'm going to try and pull the chat up here too. One thing that's pressing. Okay, I see securing funding. I work at a nonprofit. Getting caught up on billing. Yes, that is one of my least favorite. Wedding planning, that's exciting, but tedious, right? That's a lot. I know my daughter just went through that. That is a lot. So feel free to chat in. And again, I normally, if we had more time, would give people, like 10 minutes to work on this. But definitely think this through. What's on your plate at home? What's on your plate caring for dogs, training? Yes. At home and work and billing, right? Who loves to track all their billable hours, right? It's a necessary kind of thing, right? In a billable hour world. So, how do you figure out what you should be doing, right? So, here are some things to kind of clue you in. And again, kind of speaking very broadly, think about what activities, people, or tasks just sort of drain you, deplete your energy. Was there anything on this plate list or just in general that come to mind that just drain you? The next thing I want you to think about is what actually energizes you. And on your list for home and work, I would kind of put like a smiley face if it energizes you, and maybe an X, not so much. And then the third component is to think about, is it really a strength of yours? And there's all kinds of ways to dig into that we don't have time for today. But the more time you can spend on doing things you enjoy and that are a strength for you, you're going to get things done at a quicker clip and it will not feel exhausting. Here's another thing to consider. What is your most, and I'd love to chat in, just chat this in real quick. What is your most productive time of day? Are you a morning person, midday, late night? Like you start getting your energy ramped up 2 o'clock on. So often, it's not only about what we need to get done, but where and how we need to do it that we could be working against ourselves. Let me just look at the chat here. Morning, mid morning, late morning. Okay. So here's a tip. You should be scheduling your things that you don't enjoy quite as much or that feel like a drain during your most productive time of day. So, any of us, because you're going to have more energy, right? So, any of us who loathe billing, compiling reports, inputting hours, well, one, I would beg the question, do you not have a VA or an assistant to help you with that? But um, do it, calendar it as a habit, something you have to do every Friday morning, especially if you're a morning person. If you're an afternoon person, every Friday afternoon. So again, it's not only about getting done what you have to get done, but also doing it where your energy is highest and your most productive time because you're going to get further faster, right? Going back to focusing on what you can control. I know this is like my third slide on that. You can tell that this is a big point for me. Self accountability and self responsibility is huge and something that has to be learned through experience, right? But what we can focus on controlling are our thoughts, our responses, when and how we respond. Remember, go back to why are you letting texts and emails interrupt your productivity? Stop. Stop. And I know I hear from people all the time, Julie, I don't know if I put it on do not disturb, then have a conversation. Try it. Right? If you know you need some uninterrupted blocks of time to work in, what is stopping you? I have literally done trainings with law firms the last 10 years where we put signs on the door, the physical door, productivity and progress, like doors closed, because I know this whole open door policy actually comes to bite you, right? It doesn't work in today's work environment because if we're open to chats and emails and phone calls and we're never going to get our work done, and that's just stressful to many people, to many, right? Listening, our communication, our mindset. So I've actually coached some senior leaders in healthcare, and there's a health system near me where one of their core values is assume positive intent. And they literally, she told me when she was in her new role, she's like, Julie, when there's like conflict, people actually start meetings. Hey, Jill, assuming positive intent, and you meant blah, 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 blah. It actually helps to lower the stress and open the dialogue. The other thing I've crossed out at the bottom of this list on this slide is competing commitments. Too often, and go back to your plate exercise or finish it later today or this weekend, too often we have so many competing commitments. Like the puzzle pieces don't fit over and over and over again, right? Like many of us can sustain change or pressure for a short period of time. My question to all of you listening is, or watching, is how long have you had this like feeling where it just seems to never end? So that's where the plate exercise comes in. It's like we can't keep doing the same thing over and over again. And one of my favorite quotes by Albert Einstein is insanity is doing the same thing over and over and over and over again. You can get all excited and have all the optimism in the world every Sunday night and just be like, all right, let's do this. And then you get in and the optimism's gone by 10 o'clock or the caffeine's worn off, whatever, right? But that's not how it works. So you have to ask yourself, do you have too many competing commitments on your time? So it's about balancing not just the physical energy, but the mental energy. That is what exhausts people and is often left behind. The third step you really have to take a time out and think about is how do you begin your ideal day? Ideally, we know there's anomalies and it doesn't always work, and there's, sick animals and kids and snow and ice and whatever, right? And client emergencies. But generally speaking, how would you begin your day? I ask every career client this. In an ideal world, how would you like to begin your day? And then what happens when you don't? Because the energy you bring, you have to set yourself up for success. Many people, my husband, I don't know, he's the one who like rolls out of bed, gets where he's going in 15 minutes. And I can't operate that way. So this is an example of like my ideal day. I swim, I exercise, I'm home by 6:45, coffee with my daughter, off she goes to school, work 8:15 to 4:30. Does that happen all the time? Of course not. But I notice the days where I don't take 30 minutes of think time. That's another challenge I have too, and I think I'm jumping ahead a slide, is how many of you actually put in your calendar, whether it's think time, continuing ed, and I don't mean CLEs. I mean like read something that motivates you, that you're passionate about. And I don't mean scrolling on social media and I don't mean news headlines. I mean something that develops you, something you're interested in to really get you, the juices flowing and get your energy moving each morning. Or I don't know how many of you journal, but I would challenge you. That is an activity that helps a lot of people. I don't know if it's right for you, again, whether it's walking the dog, listening to a podcast, whatever. But when you skip that development time versus if you did it for the next 30 days, I'd love to see what your thoughts are there. If you want to be on top of your game at work and home, so much of this is about giving yourself permission to shift scheduling. I hate to keep coming back to time and scheduling. I used to go on site at law firms, I might have mentioned, and literally we would break down SOPs and employee processes and procedures. I'd literally take calendars of attorneys and we'd figure out what's working and what's not. But just in terms of that work-life fit, right? Whether you have kids or don't have kids or have animals or you're a single person, it doesn't really matter. You have interests outside of work, I'm sure, right? You have to give yourself permission and the grace to shift with the seasons. And I literally mean the months of the year. So, for instance, any of you who are caring for family members or have kids that are in activities, like summers, I used to panic. I was like, oh my gosh, what am I going to do? Like, I have meetings all the time. And so I finally learned with enough bumps and bruises to stop trying to schedule meetings while I'm sitting at the swim team practice and instead do work that didn't require me to be interfacing or doing interviews, right? Or if you have people counting on you, what if you decided and communicated to your families, hey guys, Tuesday nights, that's my late night at the office, home, away, wherever. That's my late night. So it's almost about setting expectations and communicating them, right? And we tend to always think, and I get it, in terms of billable hours, months, or quarters, but by season, I mean season of your life. let's say you're in some young professional groups and you like to play volleyball on Tuesday nights, like then don't schedule meetings at, 3 and 4 o'clock. They're going to perpetually make you late because all that does is stress you out, right? So think about what season are you in, like literally August versus September versus December, and do you need to adjust your calendar a little bit? The other thing I want you to be aware of is we do have these three parts of the mind. And I can't go into a ton of it as a Colby certified consultant because none of you have taken the A, but I just want to make mention of this at a very high level. Oftentimes, stress and burnout can be related to what I call cognitive overload, which means, again, that whole too much on your plate factor, too much coming at you at once, whether it's direction, and there's those competing commitments. Like your brain just hurts. Like think about the times when you're like, oh my gosh, I can't, right? So what do you do? And, you've got to figure out what really is the highest and best use of your time, as I mentioned, right? And the other thing is, I don't know how many of you have responsibilities for seeing clients, maybe doing initial consults, maybe drafting documents, prepping for court, prepping for trials, depositions, whatever, writing. Um, that requires a lot of different skill sets, right? So when you're trying to jump from a client meeting to run to a trial to draft a brief to like sometimes our brains have trouble shifting versus if you said, okay, I'm going to do any writing in the mornings and I'm going to block my calendars Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday for client appointments. Have you thought about what are the like skill sets that you can easily flex from versus an hour, 45 minutes to work on a brief. Then I'm going to go into a meeting. Then I have to run over here. Then I have to file these papers. Like it can be exhausting. So think about how are there ways to group those tasks? And instead of feeling like you're trapped, like can you build some fences or guardrails around your calendar or schedule? So even just administratively, like I don't know how many of you again are empowered to do this depending on your law firm culture, etc. you know do you have a no client day? Do you have a day where you do all administrative? I've coached people firms where Mondays were their team days. They saw no clients on Mondays unless it was like an emergency, which they defined, right? Or they don't see clients before 10 a.m. Or they don't see clients after 12 o'clock on Fridays, or they only see clients Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. Like it just, there are lots of creative ways to do that, but limiting your interruptions, consolidating like activities, these are just some examples that can help you as well. Then effectively you can be drained. So this is kind of like the feeling part of the mind, your emotions, personality conflicts. Obviously that can be draining. I'm sure you could all think about a client that is draining, a work relationship that's draining, like trying to manage all of that can be challenging, right? And then this conative burnout, this is where the Colby comes in. And again, I'm just going to breeze past this, but this is a tool I've been certified in since 2016, and a lot of law firms actually around the country and professional services firms use it. Really help to identify it's all about the innate way that you take action and get your work done. And so that change factor, the risk factor, do you operate well within or without standardized procedures? So basically, when you are forced to do things that don't align with how you work best, that's where the burnout can come in. And this is just a quick glimpse of what that looks like. I'm going to skip this. So, how do we buy back, and I'm trying to watch our time here, more time and energy, right? And one thing you can do is play to your strengths. And going back to that example of, the oxygen mask on the airplane, when does time fly by? What's last on your list? Who are you the go-to for? These are things that help you identify your strengths and where you should be spending your time as well. Another quick exercise, oops, that I'll have you do just as a quick example to really understand when you might be working against yourself. So, on a piece of paper, write your first and last name with your dominant hand, the hand you normally write with. Just write your first and last name and chat in. How does that feel? You're just writing your first and last name, dominant hand. How does that feel? Easy, effortless, fine. Yeah, like Julie, this is silly. Why are you making me do this, right? Now I want you to switch hands and I want you to write your first and last name with your non-dominant hand and tell me how that feels. Very hard, uncomfortable. One thing I'll also make note of, the response time on that was a lot slower. So here's the thing. The more you work with the instinctive way that your talents are and who you are, you're gonna get further faster, you're gonna feel less burnt out. That left hand or non my left hand, non-dominant hand for you, it's gonna take be more sluggish, take longer, feel uncomfortable. That's what happens when you're working outside of your strengths, whether they're a technical strength or whether they're a conative strength with the Colby A. And again, I'll show you how you can get more information on that down the road. Next, let's look at how do you build your performance plate. So I talked about my famous plate exercise, what's on your plate, work, home, right? So the next step is like, what do you do about it? So think about what is mission critical to your clients, just even honing in on the month of August, right? So even if you're on vacation, who's on vacation in August? That's okay. Gives you 3 weeks, right? Mission critical to clients and mission critical to home. What are the top three things, right? And for any of you who love to-do lists, you are at the point where, especially as you evolve in your career, each item on your to-do list might not take 1 minute or 2 minutes or 5 minutes, right? They could take hours, they could take days. And so a to-do list is only as helpful as its place in your calendar. So think about that and ask yourself a little bit further. And I'm going to give everybody a copy of these slides. So if you're taking notes, what really, in terms of what should be on that performance plate, what really takes you, what really, really requires you, what can be pushed out. So let's say you're just running behind. And if any of you are in, real estate or estate planning, any sort of contractual, law or transactional law, I should say, can it be pushed out, right? What can be delegated? What's mission critical? What's client facing? And is it a strength of yours? Just because you've done something over and over again, the time is now to think about should you still do it? And so this slide sort of compiles everything we've spoken about so far. Like, ask yourself, like, to gain clarity succinctly in these 4 questions. What's your most productive time of day? How do you ideally want to begin your day? How will you zero in on your top priorities? And commit to something. I don't care if you're an app, a OneNote, an Outlook, doesn't matter. Just pick something to try consistently for the next 30 days. And what is a personal activity that is, remember, you got to have balance, right? It's not just all work, it's not just home, but it's also about you, right? And this is really important to differentiate between what's a skill versus what's a passion, what's a hobby. And as you grow and evolve in your careers as an attorney or a paralegal or legal assistant, just because you've been there, done that, and it's a skill doesn't mean you should continue to do it. And that's also very, very hard when I coach people. What is something you can do to protect your energy, right, at work and home in the next 5 days? Is it scheduling something you enjoy? And by the way, kudos to you that had typed in how you like to start your day. However you like to start your day, how many of you have it in your calendar? How many of you have lunch breaks in your calendar, right? How many of you just have breaks to get up and walk around for 15 minutes? Probably not. Those are small things you can do, right? Write it down, put it on your calendar, talk to your spouse or partner, schedule workouts, try free trials. Some final thoughts to give you some better balance. Really review that performance plate. Eliminate what's not necessary. Even just look at the remainder of this week and into next week. Like break it down because I hear it all the time. Oh gosh, Julie, I can't even think about it. Believe me, I have had paralegals and legal assistants like just stuck because they have no idea where to schedule time because there's no time on the attorney's calendar. Well, that could be a whole other issue of do you have enough staff? Do you not have enough staff? Right? Evaluate your week every Sunday. Give yourself permission to realign with each season. Play to strengths for you and your team. Keep a journal, right? Have an accountability partner. Cross mentoring. I don't know how many of you have mentors that are less experienced than you and more experienced than you. A lot can be learned from a technology standpoint, from an emotional intelligence standpoint. There's a lot of really beneficial ways to identify a mentor, and feel free to reach out to me if you need some suggestions. So, finding the next right step in your career is certainly a journey, and changing all of this won't come to you. You have to go to it. And so, what is one thing that you could do that could change everything? I know I've thrown a lot of ideas at you, this afternoon here, but what is one thing that could sort of change everything for you? Your future is in your hands. And if you are curious, and this will be in the materials Jen sends out, and then certainly want to address any questions in the last 5 minutes here. But I have two QR codes here. My business is careerdevelopmentadvisors.net. If you are curious about some, how to make your team more productive, work within that setting, you can scan that left QR code. If you are looking for, coaching for yourself and or just curious about what the heck that even is or means, or you're welcome to just go to my website and schedule time, but that'll take you to two different calendar links. So you're welcome to utilize either one. So, questions, comments, I'm happy to try to address for you.
While we wait for questions to come in, I'll just remind everyone that anything that we shared as resources, I'll email out to all registrants. So you'll be sure to get copies of those. And like Julie said, she'll give us copies of the slides. So you didn't have to worry about taking screenshots or notes. And if you have any questions, I'm happy to connect you with Julie. And if you have any ideas for how the New York State Bar Association's Attorney Wellbeing Program can continue to offer programs like this on various other topics, please let us know. We're seeing a lot of thank yous in the chat, but no questions so far.
No problem. I know it can be overwhelming tossing a lot of information that some of these we could spend an entire day sort of addressing, but trying to give you, I recognize that a lot of different tools or prompts are going to strike people in different ways, right, at different times. So if you can just take one or two nuggets, that would be the goal. And then certainly you can feel free to email me if you have questions or just want to chat further. I'm happy to do so.
Great. Well, I guess we'll end 1 minute early if no questions come in as we close out. Julie, thank you so much for taking the time and energy to present this to us today and providing these resources. I really think they'll be helpful to all of our members. And I hope everyone has a great rest of your day.
Thank you for having me. Take care, everyone.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you.